This is Glenda Dawson, and I have Moon Girl here with me, and you're watching the Paranormal Dolls. Hi, Moon Girl. How you doing?
Hi, beautiful.
How's
Excited
everything?
about our guest. We always have great guests, but I love this one a lot. The bestie, the Courtney. By the way, the best historian ever. So you
Yes,
heard it from my mouth. Yeah.
yes, yes. Very, very knowledgeable.
Yes.
Understands the real history
Yes.
and tells us all about it. So shares it with the world. Hi,
Yeah.
Courtney. How are you?
Hi, thank you for the compliments. I'm good. How are you, ladies?
We're doing good. Thank you.
Good.
Excited to have you, of course.
Yes.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. I love talking with you guys.
So, for those that don't know you, tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Courtney McInvale. I am just local ghost tour guide and author here in the Mystic, Connecticut area. I grew up in a haunted house, so fascinated with the paranormal. The Warrens came to my house when I was 15, so they investigated the haunting there, which kind of led a lot of credibility to the haunting at the house at the time. They did a cleansing there. And then I was so embarrassed growing up in a small town by all of that. I pretended that they didn't come to my house and didn't talk about living in a haunted house for 10 years. But when I was in college, I did continue to have experiences. I worked for the government in college and after college, and I still had a fascination with the paranormal. And then when I was on an assignment in Vermont, I met a woman who seemed to be living my dream. She was telling ghost stories to people and writing ghost books about history and about her region. And her name's Thea Lewis. And she had lunch with me and kind of told me how she got started. And we still chat back and forth. And she sort of told me I could do it too. And then in 2013, I started a haunted tour company and started writing haunted books. And here we are.
That's
Yeah.
very fascinating.
Hmm.
So, you decided to do uh, to start a company, and now what does the company do? Is it only in Mystic, or have you
No,
expanded?
we're growing and evolving. We started in Mystic, giving tours in the downtown Mystic historic area in 2013. 2 years later, we started doing one of the local colonial burial grounds as well, which is one of my favorite places. I just love the people buried there so much. And then a couple of years after that, we expanded just over the border from Connecticut into Rhode Island to a town that has a lot of ghosts from mysterious shipwrecks, pirates, witches that they didn't, burn or hang. And so we started talking about those in Westerly, Rhode Island. And so the tours have expanded. A lot of them are walking tours, but we also do hop on buses, caravans. We do special events. Like right now, we're running my Bloody Valentine tours, telling people about the, macabre history of Valentine's. And we do Ghosts of Christmas Past too. Right now, too, we're expanding on going to be doing a tour in Ireland in 2025 about rebels of Ireland, sort of the Easter Rising 1916, and we'll be there on the anniversary, and that will be really fun. And I'm working on tours in Georgia to support the
Hmm.
books and research there. And so I've almost finished drafting one for Macon, Georgia, so that will be the first Georgia tour, hopefully later this year.
Nice.
Yes. Exciting. Now
Yeah.
you are oh sorry. You are working on a lot of new projects and appearances. Can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so a lot of what I'm doing is really focused on the Civil War ghost books. So during the pandemic, I had a really bizarre dream where these two Civil War soldiers appeared and kind of led me to find their grave. And I started researching them and what happened to them and their imprisonment. And I decided to write about them and some of the other soldiers from my region in Connecticut. And then I just really sort of fell back in love with the study of Civil War. It brought me closer to my father, who has passed away, but he raised me on that history. So I felt by writing that, I kind of honored him. And so all my Civil War stuff really started spiraling, through 2020, snowballing up through today. So a lot of the engagements I'm doing are in towns down south where there are battles or engagements or haunted places that relate to the Civil War. So I just finished a book tour this fall in Georgia for Volume 1. Volume 2 is coming out, and I just started talking with a bunch of places in Georgia. So I'll be back there this fall doing another book tour for Volume 2. I also will have an episode coming out on Gaia on a show
Oh,
called Beyond Belief
very
with
nice.
George Norrie. That should be out next month. And actually, Moon Girl kind of has an appearance in a way on there because the two of us visited Gettysburg last year and we recorded some really
Wow.
phenomenal evidence on the battlefield. And they were so impressed. That they play the evidence in the episode. So people will get to hear what we heard. And I'm so excited about that. So those are some of the things coming up. And I will always update my website with book talks. I have one coming up in Rhode Island later this month. And, hopefully just throughout the year, we'll just keep sharing Civil War ghost stories.
Nice, nice. And now, is this been the Civil War stuff? Has that been a passion of yours always, or did it you grew into it, or how did that happen?
So when I was little, I liked it, I think because I likened it to time with my dad. He
Right.
would read me a book called Southerners, and it had in there, pictures of a bunch of Southern generals. And so he would, quiz me because he was always like, oh, she's so smart, and would have me memorize all their faces and things, and by age like, 7, I could identify all of them. And he had Civil War like memorabilia in the house because he was a history major. So it was his passion, so by default I liked it. I think when I went to college, I really wanted to major in history too, and my mom was really funny. She kind of always called my dad a cornucopia of useless knowledge, meaning like he was so smart but she didn't know what he was going to do with it. So she said to me, you don't really want to be a history major. What are you going to do? My dad was a police officer, but he wasn't using his major, right?
Right.
So she said, find a job that you find a degree that like you can get a job in. And I convinced my mother that politics would work because I knew that I could take a lot of history courses with politics. So I majored in international relations, and I did fall in love with history that way. And I got to study abroad in Ireland through that program and live there for a time. And they are a culture that is so rich in history that they celebrate and that is a part of their daily life. So
Mhm.
falling in love with their rebellions and visiting Scotland and their rebellions, I thought we have our own huge rebellion right here. And my dad taught me about it when I was little. So my passion for it kind of came back as I started to have
Mhm.
life experiences. And now, I can't vacation without visiting a Civil War battlefield. So
It's a real passion, that's for sure.
yes, yes. I just went to Nashville with my mom and my husband, and I made a stop in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where there's not really anything to do, but there is a battlefield there, and I had to do it. And so,
Yes. Now, can you elaborate a little bit more when you go do your little investigations in Gettysburg, or when you talk about it, your appearances there?
yeah, so you've kind of been with me. You see that I try to like play it casual. I think the hardest thing at battlefields, and I almost missed the pandemic for this reason, are the amount of
There's too
living
many
people
people.
there. There's
Yes.
so many people. There are national parks, there's state parks. People are hiking. They're chilling, and I'm there for the dead people, you know and so that's hard. And I traveled to a bunch of them during the pandemic, and I was the only living person there. It was the dream. Anyway, um when I go there, I always sort of try to assess out, if I don't know it, kind of what energy we're working with. Is it residual,
Mm-hmm.
Or is it active? Meaning, is it something where I'm going to hear these pulses from time, or there's a time slip, or the event is replaying, and I might feel that or capture evidence of it, but I'm not going to communicate with it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not a spirit saying, hello, I died here. This is my name.
Right.
And you can kind of get the pulse for that when you're there. Do you feel like a little bit in limbo? Do you feel like you hear voices? Do you hear gunshots? Do you hear cannon? And that likens you to the fact that maybe you're at like a little portal or vortex or whatever you want to call them, but it's more of a residual haunting. If you're going and you feel like physical sensations on your body,
Mm-hmm.
or you hear almost either in your own ears or in your mind, depending on how you sort of intuit information, people talking to you or asking who you are or what you're doing, then you might want to investigate with a spirit box or something that they can communicate with. Gettysburg and Antietam and a lot of these battlefields, they kind of have both at
Yeah.
different parts, and depending on when you go, you might have different experiences. There's an area called Cemetery Ridge at Gettysburg, and it's where the famous incident of Pickett's charge took place. And I always felt that that was a highly residual area. You could feel people marching, you could hear the yelling, you could hear the smoke, you could feel the agony. And I had always had experiences with it being residual or a time slip. However, one time I was on a road trip with my husband this past year. He's taken me to concerts as I demand to be taken to. And he said, I have a surprise for you on the way there of where we're going to stop. And we stopped in Gettysburg, and we got a hotel that sort of is right next to Cemetery Ridge. And I want to be clear, I am not saying this is what anyone should do. You are not supposed to be in there at night. You used to be able to a couple years ago. The Park Service changed it. You're not supposed to be. That being said, we're in the hotel, the balcony, we can see Cemetery Ridge, and we're thinking we don't need a car. We can just toddle in a little bit, see what's going on. So it's the middle of the night. We walk in there, and I immediately got this sensation that I wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't what I usually felt at Cemetery Ridge. And I felt like I could hear voices saying, who are they? What are they doing here? And I said, let's go. I took a few really cool night shots of the monuments under the stars, and then, said, let's go. I'm just feeling, this is their time.
Right.
They're assembling, they're confused, they're aware of me. And so we start walking, and I felt this hand on my shoulder that's like, thank you, let me walk you out. It was very like kind but firm and tall. It like felt like it came from someone tall. My husband's much taller than me, so I turned around and he wasn't there. He was like to the side up to the front, and I said, you weren't by any chance like just holding my shoulder? He's like, no, but the moment you looked for me, I saw a light leave your shoulder and like fly
Wow.
off. So for me, it's like, it was shocking because it was a place that I had always said was a residual haunt, but at that moment I had an experience that was physical.
Mm-hmm.
So you really kind of have to ascertain each time you go and decide what you want to do. When Moon Girl and I were there, we left a REM pod on in the hotel room one night. All
Oh.
night, this thing doesn't go off, but we're just like, we're also close to the battlefield. We don't know. And then in the morning, we're like, oh, whatever. And as soon as like this energy heard us wake up, the REM pod starts like going off.
Crazy.
So
Crazy.
it's very changing at battlefields, and you really just have to feel the vibe when you're there. If you're at a part of the battlefield at the time that battle took place, you're going to get really strong energy then. Full moon, you might get it then too.
Mhm.
Each time is different. That's a long answer to your question, but I hope that helps.
Back to the hotel thing, as you remember, we went to this one place. I forgot the name where we went to. I'm sorry. And then we came back and we brought a little ghost with us. Well, I would say little, but yeah. So we were staying in one
Probably a
room.
big guy.
It was a big guy. It was a big guy. we're staying in a room, but it was like locked off. I had my own room, they had their room. And in
Yeah, it
the
was
middle
like
of
a
the
suite.
night,
Yeah.
I felt like somebody just staring at me, like angrily staring at me. That I kind of like sneaked into Courtney's, like, Courtney, do you see a guy? And she was asleep. So I was like, okay, I
I,
felt it. And in the morning we talked about it. I'm like, hey, dude, there was like a
I had
ghost
a weird
in the
dream
room.
too that I saw him by my husband's side of the bed
Yeah.
looking at me, and my husband never notices, but I was like, oh, but I was so tired because I fell that night
Yes, she did.
at the Devil's Den, and
Oh,
I I have a
Yeah, she's part of
huge
the Devil's Den forever. She left her DNA on there.
I bled so much. I have a huge scar on my knee still, like to this day. I looked at it the other day. I was like, look at my war wound. My war wound from Gettysburg, a reminder that I just tripped and fell in the dark, which is why you're not supposed to be there in the dark. So let it be a
Yeah.
lesson to everyone
mhm.
else.
You have to like carry Courtney to the car.
We weren't sure it was bleeding that much, and then we were like, oh,
Uh-oh. Well,
yeah,
you know what? I think until we got in the car, that's when it was like, Yeah.
it's okay. I think that maybe was a trigger moment for them. They were like, blood. This is familiar. Follow her.
Yeah, that's
That's true. That is true. But I remember it was kind of like crazy because we didn't even get a chance to talk to each other about this. You were already asleep, and I was like, okay, I don't want to bother you. But yeah, I felt him in the corner just kind of staring at me. When we talked in the morning, you said that you felt it too, and you even told your husband, Marty, you're like, there was somebody here. And I'm like, yeah, dude, there totally was.
Yeah, yeah. I love it though. I love
Yeah.
it. Like, I want them to visit me, which
Uh-huh.
I know sounds like weird. Everyone says you're supposed to be scared. I
No.
want them to feel comfortable with me. I want them to talk with
Mhm.
me. I want them to know that my goal is to share their story with integrity and to honor them
Mhm.
and to ensure that they're still sort of loved by, the people of the present. And if they want to, come chat with me, then that means that maybe they understand that. That's always my hope.
Yeah, and that they're still remembered.
Yeah. I always tell them that, like I'm ensuring your memory. If you have a story to share, like I want them to feel comfortable doing that.
Hmm.
very good. Very good. A very different take than most paranormal investigators.
I know. I know. I think, I
We've
hear
had
that a
these
lot.
conversations.
I hear that a lot. Everyone's like, "Oh, how interesting that you approach it this way." But I don't know that it's that odd. I feel like it's a very human approach. I operate under the understanding, as I assume many paranormal folks do, that a ghost or a spirit or whatever you want to call them is simply a human without their physical vessel.
Mhm.
So why would I treat them differently than I would treat a living person? I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to approach them, respectfully, but that's not always the case. As
Yeah.
you know,
It's
as you know.
become, and I think to the credit of some people in the industry, they are hoping that it changes again. I
Right.
think it's become this very like adrenaline seeking, thrill seeking sort of thing. And in the age of media and TV and movies, everyone sort of made it, how can we make it horror? How can we make it scary? And the paranormal, really got the integrity sucked out of it for entertainment appeal. But I think slowly
Mhm.
but surely there are more people that are coming in that are genuinely looking for these connections with spirits at a location, why they're there. Is there a purpose? What type of haunting? And I think there's still a spiritual awakening happening. It's just those folks are still a little intimidated by, whatever happened before.
Mhm.
Mhm. Oh, I know Munger and I both agree that respect is number one. And,
Yes,
uh,
yes. You catch more flies with honey. I mean,
yes,
Uh-huh.
that's
yes, you do.
And vinegar.
if I walk in or walk to a battlefield, I already look a little bit weird standing there talking to the sky to the average passerby. I understand. But if I walk to a battlefield and I'm like, hello to anyone that's there. My name's Courtney. I've come to learn from you and communicate with you. Can you make your presence known or let me know you're here? That to me is a way of introducing myself, giving them an opportunity to speak, and letting them know I'm not there to harm them. You could go like we see on all these programs and other investigators. Hey, show yourself. I know you're here. What do you want? Like, just very demanding,
Right.
but that's
Yeah.
not, showing any understanding of the story. And
Well,
it's hurtful. I wouldn't approach someone if I was in the afterlife. Like, I'd be like, excuse me.
well, especially being a woman in Gettysburg and you're trying to talk to the soldiers, you need to kind of talk to them, in a certain way, introduce yourself, and why is this woman standing here,
It's
kind of thing.
always such a conundrum when I do that. I always feel so out of place. So I say to them, I've come to help. Are any of
Mhm,
you in need of help? So that way, if they are in the theory that maybe some of them don't know they're dead or they think they're injured, they might
mhm,
think that I'm a nurse. I also try to explain my accent so that both sides feel comfortable speaking to me. I'll say, I know I sound, like a Yankee. I'm from Connecticut. My father's from the South. So, I joke with them and tell them about, so we have our own, sort of divide in my household. But that means I come with outside. I come to help all of
mhm,
you. I try to really explain this. Like, I even go so far, and, maybe I am just talking to the sky sometimes, but most of the time I believe they hear me. And I'll even say, I know my devices light up and they look strange or they make noises. This isn't witchcraft. This isn't something that can harm you. It's something that helps me help you.
mhm.
I try to explain it as if they can see it, in a classroom,
Yeah.
because we have to take into consideration the context of the time they lived in as well and the social etiquette. And I think that's something a lot of folks don't do either.
They
Mm.
go in there most of the time very aggressively. So I
Hmm.
think this approach that all three of us agree on doing, I think it's much better. And you get more evidence, you get them to open up and, in a sense, speak to you more, whether through, the boxes, the spirit boxes, or they show themselves. Because we saw apparitions as well when we went over there.
Yeah.
Besides the orbs, we actually saw, because we did 2 investigations together before. And the first time I went, I don't think she got to see the apparition I saw because you were further up. And then when we went this time together, you actually saw the one I thought I saw at that spot where you took a picture. So it's just
Yeah.
so crazy how it's still there. Well,
Yeah.
residual.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes residual, sometimes active. Like I
Yeah.
said, I've had both there. The active ones at battlefields are super active sometimes. Like,
Mhm.
they come across so real that people have claimed them to be real. Like, when the Hollywood movie Gettysburg was filming, I believe they were one of the only, Hollywood media things that were allowed to film at the national parks. Like, they very much don't allow it. And so they were filming the movie, and some of the guys reported that they were like on a break, and a man walked up to them, one of the, background guys, reenactors, and was like, "Oh, here you go. You're going to need this." And he put these, like, musket balls, these old fashioned musket balls in their hand for the upcoming scene. And that's what they supposed anyway. And they thought, oh, these like are really heavy and these look kind of, old. How cool. So they showed their producer, and their producer said, we didn't send those to you guys. And they didn't know who that guy was. And then they brought them to an antique dealer, and they were like authentic of the time. They weren't reproduction. They weren't,
Wow.
movie set items. And so sometimes when they appear, they can be that, vivid that people are encountering them, which is really neat too.
Yes.
Very neat. That must be awesome. Yeah. When I've gone to Gettysburg myself, and the times I've been there, I've seen full apparitions. And then one was actually, I have to admit, one kind of scared me a little bit because it would just keep staring no matter where I went, whether I walked that way or walked that way or got into the car, he would just stare. I'm like,
Oh,
I'm like, okay.
It's like, who's that little lady?
I'm like, okay, I'm out of here. And I was by myself that time. So
I had one incident by the car that was similar to that at Gettysburg, by Iverson's Pits, which you would know you're near Iverson's Pits if you see the eternal flame. So there's the eternal flame, and then if you look across from the parking lot, you can kind of see Iverson's Pits, which was the first recorded ghost story of Gettysburg. So of course, I always like to go there and check it out. But one time when I was there, I saw a man looking at me, this was when you were allowed to be there at night. So,
right.
he had, dark eyes and dark hair, and he recognized that I was there, but he looked alarmed by it. I was alarmed by his expression. So you hear me, I have my audio recorder on at this time, and I see the man and I'm like, hello. And you hear a shuffle as if he's moving, which he is. And then I get nervous and I say, Marty, I'm calling for my husband. And he's like, are you okay? I said, no, there's a man. He's coming toward me. And he's like, let's just go. And we got in the car. And the car we were in had like one of those things that like lights up when something's like an indicator, like
Yeah.
to you.
Next to you, yeah.
Yeah, and I saw the man outside my car window when we shut the door, and I
Oh
was
my gosh.
ugh. And then I saw the indicator, and it
Yeah.
started, beeping, telling us, that there was something there. And I was just like so floored by that. And then later, I started writing my Georgia book, and I was looking up one of the generals from Georgia, and Iverson was from Georgia, even though he had a North Carolina brigade. And I looked up his picture, and at first I thought, oh, he's handsome. And then I thought, oh, that's the man that was on the battlefield that was looking at me. So he must have known before I did that I was going to write about him.
There you
Well,
go. There you go.
speaking of books, you're an amazing author. Can you tell us about your books?
Yeah, so the first book I ever did was called Haunted Mystic, came out in 2014. And then I did Revolutionary War Ghosts of Connecticut in 2016. And then in 2021, Civil War Ghosts of Connecticut was sort of my first experiment in the Civil War books, and that was released. But I'm re-editing it now because I just got so excited. I pushed it out really quickly. So if you read it, I'm working on it. And then I really took my time because my dad's from Georgia, and I wanted to spend time down in an area that had a lot of battles. I did Civil War Ghosts of Georgia, and that was split into volumes 1 and 2. Volumes 1 being about battlefields and regiments, volume 2 being about some of the individuals, some of the legends like Lost Confederate Gold, the Great Locomotive Chase, things like that, and a chapter on Savannah, or a whole section on Savannah is in volume 2. And those are all part of what I call the Bury My Bones series, which is after one of my favorite songs, and often plays when I am at cemeteries, and I think a song that they like about being brought home and buried after dying too young. So I named the series after that. And the Georgia books have just been so much fun. They have so many battlefields that are there, like Chickamauga and Kennesaw Mountain, that I've gotten to spend a lot of time at. And in a way, I think Chickamauga rivals Gettysburg in hauntedness. So that's been pretty cool too.
Yeah.
And you've been able to communicate there with soldiers and
Oh, yes. I mean, yes. So Chickamauga, I love because it's more untouched than other battlefields. People forget it's there. It's at the bottom of the Appalachian Mountains. It's near Lookout Mountain. It's in this very quiet corner of Georgia. So yeah, you don't want to go there. Leave it for me, right? Um, but it's, they essentially, there are roads through the battlefield, but it's the roads that were there at the time. Like you can see the old battle maps and see that they were there at the time. time. If you go there, they have stories that have been debunked and stories that haven't. They have a white lady that is often seen by Wilder Tower looking for someone she lost in battle. And so she's been widely reported since the beginning. They have also reenactors that have encountered other soldiers there, Boy Scouts who have seen drumming people march out of the woods. I, on my recent visit, had the most peculiar encounter. I was sitting by this like cannon monument, which is usually where either a general's headquarters were or where they died. This was where headquarters were. It was sunset, and I was just sort of watching the sunset, and I felt all these eyeballs on me. And I looked, and there was just a row of deer along the woods, just all staring at me as I was sitting there. And I was like, it almost felt like it was them, you know, looking at me. And then I saw this, like, it's crazy, like a fireball go across the sky. And I was like, is that a shooting star during the day? Is that a, a cannon? Is that like, what is that? Like, and my husband wasn't with me. He was in another area, but I figured it was so big and it went across the whole field that surely he saw it too. And it didn't make a sound or anything, which was also strange. And he came back and he didn't, but it was like this little, like, I don't know, memento of like a moment in time that I was the only one there that would see it. And that was on an area called Snodgrass Hill. So yeah, lots of experiences there and lots of, dead folks that I think are still actually buried out there. So it's interesting. Yeah.
I want to ask you who your favorite general is and why.
No.
I know you love them all, but you have pictures of some in your home. Just saying.
I know. I'm looking at them like they're gonna be mad. They're in all my walls. They're on all my walls.
She loves them all.
I do. So, shoot. Okay. Can I pick a few?
Yes, and who you have the biggest crush on? Okay, no.
Oh, that depends. I have a crush on a few too. I have a crush, and this is probably not popular, on General Hood. He was Confederate, but he was, good looking, and he was very
This is what we were
tall.
talking about the whole time on our little.
Oh my God, he was so attractive. He was
She's like,
so
can you read
tall.
his face? You think how he was? He's handsome.
I know. I always want the attractive ones to come talk to me. And I get that he had an arm he couldn't use and a leg amputation, and I don't care about any of that. He was still attractive. He was like tall. He looked like a Viking. He was like, he only traveled with the biggest, broadest soldiers. He was badass. And he didn't like listen to anybody else. He just did what he wanted to do. I have a crush on him. General Hood. I mean, I don't think all the other generals liked him all the time, but I do,
No, I do.
He was known as like, he had the Texans. It was Hood's Texans that he traveled everywhere with. And he had one brigade from Georgia. So I got to write about him, and he lost his leg at Chickamauga. So I got to write about that too. And then I, found out more to the context, and I marched through the woods to where he lost his leg. And I'm like throwing that back in the book. I love Hood. Anyway, I shouldn't, but I do. So I have a crush on him. My other favorites, for Confederate side, they kind of had more likable generals. I don't know why. Maybe they were more handsome. I don't know. Maybe I just like rebels. I like people that don't follow the law. I don't know. Stonewall Jackson. Stonewall Jackson is a favorite of mine. I love that man. He was killed at the Battle of Chancellorsville in 1863. He was 38. And he was not, his name is Thomas, but he went by Stonewall because of how he fought. I have been to where he lived. I have been to where he died. I've been to where he was shot. I've been to where his arm has its own grave site. I've been
I
to
was
his
gonna say
grave
that.
site. Yeah,
There's
Hood's
a
leg has a
cemetery
grave
that has
site too.
limbs.
I want to say I've been to Hood's leg's grave and Stonewall Jackson's arms grave. I go to the amputated limb graves as well. I love it. I love it. I feel bad for them, but it's also fun for me to do.
We went, and I was shocked. I'm like, "There's a cemetery for just limbs? What?"
Limb pits. They actually, Stonewall Jackson's arm got put in someone's family cemetery, so there's a whole family of like just
And then his
people
arm.
who lived there, and then there's one gravestone that says Stonewall Jackson's arm in the middle of these people's family graves. Anyway, Hood's is just like in the woods by like the old hospital building. I don't think it's actually there, but the people think it is. I just don't think that man would have just like traveled around with his amputated leg for 2 months. Like, that's gross. Like, I don't buy it. I don't know. I don't buy that from my crush. I don't think that's gross.
My pet would never. No.
But I love Stonewall Jackson. He was incredibly intelligent. He very much also had the respect of the men that worked under him. He could be kind of a hard ass, but like, so can I, so I get it. And, he and Longstreet were Robert E. Lee's like right hands. And I think Stonewall Jackson really kind of described the heart of the movement. People related to him and understood him. And, he really kind of came from nothing and built his reputation by himself. And he worked out a lot. He was jacked. So there's that too. His house has all his personal gym things. But for the Union side, I love Ulysses S. Grant. I call him my cute little boop. He's adorable.
See, that's what I thought you were gonna say. I was like,
I
"That's
love him too. He's right here.
I know."
Here he is. I love him. I actually have 2 pictures of him in here. He's there and he's here. So I love him. I've been to many of his places as well. I've been to his house where he died, to his grave.
Stalker.
I know.
A little.
Wife. He really loved his wife, though. I guess the other 2 did too, but maybe they didn't talk about it as much. But Ulysses talked about his wife a lot, and so I feel bad. She's in the picture too, probably watching me.
Who's this woman stalking my husband?
Ulysses was like, he was stern, but he was like smart and he knew what had to be done. And he also kind of came from nothing and built his own reputation. He was like bankrupt, and he still fought for his country and did his best. And at the end of the war, I think what I really respect about him is that he believed that America shouldn't remain divided. And he believed that the Confederacy shouldn't be made out to be demons who didn't have rights, because if the Union won, they were part of the Union again. So he gave them what was called a soft loss, and he incorporated them right back into America, no questions asked, and really tried to reconstruct America with the considerations of everyone in mind. And when he passed away, he had 2 Confederate pallbearers and 2 Union pallbearers, as a testament to how he felt. And I have read memoirs from Confederates and Union soldiers who talk about being at his funeral and who talk about being his friend, and how much his friendship meant. And by all accounts, he was also funny and relatable, and so I love him too. But those are some of my favorites. I also have on my wall next to me a fiery redhead man named Nathaniel Lyon. He died a bachelor, and a lot of people didn't like him, but I like him. I don't know. There's something about him. Yeah.
Because he's a dingy.
He was the first general to die in the war. He chased the governor of Missouri through Kansas, and he was buck wild. He's buried like 45 minutes from where I live, and by all accounts, he likes mustard on his sandwiches. Like, that's what he loves. So I always, like, once a year, I bring him a bottle of mustard. So I love them all.
What about some of the most controversial ones? Can you tell us about those?
They're probably the ones I love.
No, they are the ones you love, Courtney.
So there's one I really don't like, Jubal Early, and I don't think his own people liked him. He was just really, really harsh. He was hard to like. He was mean to everybody, and he was incredibly racist. Sherman on the Union side was also incredibly racist, and so he's really controversial because he assisted in freeing the slaves and giving enslaved people land, but he also wrote about how much he hated them, and he gave them land on an island so they wouldn't be near him, and because they weren't like him. So he's
Wow.
controversial because he
Yeah.
he's fighting for the Union doing this thing, but his personal beliefs are not in line with this.
Mhm.
He's controversial. Sherman is like talking about Voldemort down south because he burned half of Georgia. So like, just don't mention him down there. Another controversial.
Noted.
Yeah, I know.
Don't. They look
Check
at you
that
like,
out.
no. Someone, like, when I got the first draft of my book cover, they put Sherman on it, and I was like, no, I will not sell one copy. Like, take them off. And then there's one that I wrote about, and I love him, but he is controversial. But I choose not to believe what I've been told.
Denial.
Deny.
Innocent until proven guilty is what I say.
Yes.
So, his name is John Gordon. And John Gordon, I fell in love with his story because I was in this little history room at a library, and he wrote about his near-death experience when he was a veteran, and how, he kind of saw the other side. He saw soldiers that had passed. He was very open about his spirituality and the miracle that had saved him. He had been shot 5 times. He bled out through his cap in the bloody lane. His wife helped to heal him. He really had this miraculous story. And I loved that. And so I kind of deep dove into his story. And his memoirs are incredible. The way he writes about his wife, the way he writes about his men, the way he writes about Grant and Chamberlain, who are on the opposing side. He's a very exciting writer. He's eccentric. And I loved all that. So he's in my book. He's from Georgia. He's from, the Northwest corner. His wife, Fanny, is a badass. She traveled with him through the war. When soldiers retreated, she sent them back on the front lines. Like, she was the best. I loved her. And he's buried in Oakland Cemetery, and supposedly he sits by his grave on his horse, and people see him. He worked for the state later, and he was even governor for a time. He opened up the first school for Black children in the state. So that was, incredibly, useful to know. The controversy comes in, and I have talked with locals who do disagree with this, but some folks on the internet said he started that organization with 3 letters.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
The same letter.
The same letter. That
Okay.
repeats thrice. I don't think he did. I was actually speaking with a musician that I met, because I'm always at concerts when I'm not doing this. And he was from that area. And he was so funny. I was actually just listening to his music before this podcast, and he said to me, no, it was Bedford Forrest that started that organization. And I don't really like him, so I'm going with it,
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all mired in controversy, though. Now the Confederacy is mired in controversy. Every single person that was associated with it. I think it's interesting to witness the time that I've been researching it. There's been a lot of movements, a lot of monuments taken down, a lot of cemeteries desecrated, and people's response to that in these locations. And one of the responses is to give contextual markers to the time that they lived in or to explain. And I kind of appreciate that because I think sometimes we forget that 160 years ago was a really long time. So we can't expect to get historical figures to somehow atone for, a morality they wouldn't have understood yet. So it's interesting to kind of come at it from a 2024 perspective, but that's why I look at their individual stories as well. A lot of them weren't in war on either side for political reasons. A lot of them didn't have money. A lot of them were just poor folks who were engaged in the military and believed they were protecting their home and their family, and no one told them otherwise. So I try to look at it from that perspective too.
Do you? Were you going to talk, Linda?
Yeah, I was just going to ask one
Go ahead. I'm
question
sorry.
that most people who see this are probably asking, but nobody has the nerve to ask you. Do you see the limbs?
Do I see what?
The limbs when you go around to the limb.
Glenda.
I'm a
With
Gemini.
a floating
This is
arm and a
very
leg.
curious to me.
The limbs, like their arms and legs and
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah.
No,
Oh.
but okay, so they have graves. The prominent ones have graves. There are limb pits at some of the places I've been to, but I'm not allowed to say where. The park rangers have like sworn me to secrecy. But you don't see the limbs, you just kind of know where they would have been buried. A lot of the ones at Chickamauga, there's going to be a lot of limbs that you're not going to see, but the wild hogs ate the remains and brought the limbs everywhere.
Right.
So they kind of got saturated in the area, which is really gross but true. It was a bloody carpet, and then the hogs came. It was bad. So that you don't see them, but Gettysburg actually just opened up this new exhibit at the visitor center for the national park. It's free, I believe, to go through, or if not, it's like a nominal fee. Like it's very cheap. And as we were walking through, I saw this. Oh my gosh, I'm brain farting. What's the thing that they carry like the people out on, like the gurneys?
Yeah.
That they're carrying them on like after they've been shot. And I know that my boy Stonewall Jackson was shot in Chancellorsville, not Gettysburg. He was dead by then, poor thing. But I saw that gurney and I saw the blood. You can see the bloodstains on it.
Wow.
It's gross. You can see all the stuff and I looked at it and I said, that's his. Like that is his. And my husband, why would it be here? And I was like, I don't know, but it has his energy all over it. And all of a sudden I read the caption. It said, carried Stonewall Jackson after he was shot, and those were, the bloodstains from his wounds. So you can see things like that in these little museums at these visitor center. You can see gurneys, bloodstained clothes, bloodstained flags that were ripped from the flag, color guards' hands, and maybe wrapped around them when they were wounded. You can see locks of hair. You can see that they were sent home to loved ones. I mean, any number of things. Death masks. They have Ulysses S. Grant's death mask still at his home. So there's plenty of macabre things you can see. You can even see Ulysses S. Grant's cocaine he was treated with. But you won't see their limbs. But you will see plenty of gross things, so that's fun.
Close enough. A win's a win. So. I know. I thought she was saying, like, can you see the ghost limbs just roaming around? The ghost leg.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking because there are going to be people that are going to say
she's asking for a friend. No,
I have tried to conduct EVP sessions at the graves of the limbs. They don't seem to be there. I don't blame them.
Do you have any upcoming projects or events that you're working on?
Yes. So I think the biggest two things that are coming up for me are the tours in Georgia and book talks. I'm working on a schedule of those for 2024. So if you want to hear more gruesome, weird stuff about the Civil War and train wrecks and bodies and, where to find gold, come see me.
Limbs.
Yes, ghost limbs, come see
Sexy
me.
generals.
Yes. So I'm going to be doing lots of book talks. I also book private tours where I can take folks to these sites, show them spots of note. I can bring you to where the limbs are if you need me to. So definitely write to me if you need that. And then, of course, Ireland 2025. If you're into the spirit of rebellion, that carries far in Irish history. And they had the Easter Rising of 1916. We're going to go to where they attacked the British in Dublin, to where they were captured and where they were executed at the jail. We're going to go to where they lived, and we're going to go to all like where Michael Collins was assassinated. But we're also going to do fun stuff like the Ring of Kerry in the middle of it, and go look for leprechauns.
Yes, leprechaun.
Yeah. I want you to have everything because
Yeah.
I'm weird and a little ADD. That's what you get, right? But definitely check it out. It'll be with Secret Ireland Tours in April 2025.
Now, before we go, I just want to throw it out there. If you can talk a little bit about Seaside Shadows and where they can find you and to book a tour with you. She does amazing tours.
So Seaside Shadows is operating right now every month of the year in Connecticut and Rhode Island, except January. If you're coming to us in February, you can check out our My Bloody Valentine tours. Those are really fun. We talk about the history of Lupercalia, Cupid being nefarious and manipulative, and all fun stuff like that, and all the gods and goddesses that inspired it. And then March through November, we give our Downtown Mystic and Mystic Graveyard and Downtown Westerly tours 6 nights a week. You can book those at seasideshadows.com. And if you have any requests for private tours, you want to have a birthday party, an investigation, those are all things we're working on. I am working on a fundraiser for this year, but the location is not tied down yet, so I can't say it. But I'm looking at a really cool location to do a live stream paranormal investigation with Johnny Zaffis and hopefully Moon Girl as well. We're just waiting on, I'm meeting with the location tomorrow, so send the good juju. And that will be this year as well. And it's never been done before. So very exciting, but you'll see all of that at seasideshadows.com.
Nice. Well, anything else that you want to tell that you haven't spoken about?
I'm trying to think. I mean,
More sexy generals. Yeah.
I could talk to you guys for hours about ghosts and cute soldiers and,
Well, you know what? We talked about generals. What about cute soldiers? Soldier boys.
Actually, as I said that, I was thinking I could be their mother, like when I read about these soldiers and write about them, I love them, but they're like 21, 22,
They're babies. Some of them even younger.
They're babies.
Yes.
Sometimes, like when I'm giving a talk, I call them boys because to me, like they're so young. They're still boys, that were put at war before really they should be. And sometimes I'll see grown men look at me and go, "Boys." I'm like, well, to me, they're boys. Like they're little, There's so many of them. And of course, I have these books called like Unknown Faces of the Civil War. So meaning like we see their pictures, but we don't know their names. And I definitely go through. There's not so many handsome ones as you may think, but it was a tough time. It was a tough time to be alive.
Yeah.
Hard, they didn't care what they looked like, but they have like a good energy to them. And I do think a lot of them were just young. So when I come through, they probably think I'm like their auntie or their mother, So I'm just like, nice to them anyway. The generals, they were the ones in their 30s like me, which whatever, fine. They were older than that, but that's why I'm gonna, be more attracted, I guess, to the officers because it's more age appropriate.
Yeah. Naughty Courtney.
If I'm gonna like dead people, they still have to be age appropriate.
Even you.
For me to like.
Even in the paranormal community, that's frowned upon. No.
Oh my gosh, I know. Isn't there like you know me, I love Ghost Adventures, and now the public knows it too. And I think Zach Bagans is a freaking hoot.
Her love.
Isn't there an episode where like he's like in a brothel or something and he tries to get one of the lady spirits to like I don't know, like do something with him? I don't remember, but I feel like there is. I remember watching being like, what moral line are we crossing? You know,
And she does love it. She
but
does.
then I thought, you know, Zach is, you know, he works out. Maybe she's like, whatever. Like, I don't know.
Courtney is a big fan. She's even had me like give Zach a face reading. She's like, hey, can you like tell me, read his face for me? A Chinese face reading. I'm like, girl.
You know, they crap on him so hard. But I'm just going to say two things. One, paranormal TV and media wouldn't exist without his show. Like we
That's
wouldn't have a
true.
platform. The three of us wouldn't be talking right now if he didn't mainstream, you know, this topic into people's households. And two, he never said he was something he wasn't. He was always a dude who just ghost hunted with his bros and scared himself. It is what it is. Like, you either think it's funny or you don't. But, like, he's not out there trying to be like, oh, I'm the smartest and I know. No, he's like, put me in here and I'll see if I'm scared. Like, you know, it's what it is. It's entertainment value. I want to see his museum, too. I've heard it's, like, you know.
It's wonderful. We have to go. I loved it.
I want to see it. And maybe he'll come out and see me and I will give him a hug.
Maybe. I hear he's around a lot. So maybe we'll run into him.
Yes, I see. He's always like, oh, I came out and saw fans like me. Let it be me. You know? I'm in. I know he doesn't know the history, but somehow I'm okay with it. So
sometimes cute and dumb is enough. No, just kidding.
You know, he's cute and he's the only millionaire in the paranormal.
I was gonna say I think like one of the main reasons he gets like a lot of heat is because he's the only one who really made bank out of it. Honestly, he's the only one who got really famous, and he's the only one who he was smart enough to, you know, take that and make also the museum, and he's, you know, making money off of it. So good for him.
Yeah, and I've spoken with people. They're like, he has good business sense. He knows what he's doing, you know. And I think,
well, he's an Aries, so he knows.
in our industry, like, people are sometimes focused too hard on being competitive instead of just other people's successes. And for folks, I just think he's an easy target because he's so public. But, you know, I'm like, you know, let him do it. If it's not affecting you, just focus on you, you know. That's how I feel about it. Focus on what makes you, what makes you good.
Yeah. Well, that's the deal. It's very competitive in the paranormal and metaphysical fields. So there's a lot of hateration going around.
And it shouldn't be. We should be the people that are setting the example, right? Yes. Like the value of a soul, the value of heart and emotion and afterlife. We shouldn't be petty, you know?
No. So, I always tell Glenda, love and light my butt, because some of these people are like, wow.
I know, but that's why we're changing it, and that's why I'm like, I like dead people more than the living, and I don't apologize.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yes. From controversial soldiers that I have a crush on to ghost limbs to Zach Bagans, we can talk about all of it.
Next time we're gonna ask her, what was your favorite ghost limb? No, just kidding.
Right from there. Start right off.
I can tell you Stonewalls, because I know his arm is there. I love my boy Hood, but I don't believe his leg is there, but I will find it. I will find it.
We need to go find it. Road trip.
Everyone. Hold on, Courtney. Bye. Thank you.